The rain pounded against the windshield as Sammy's car sped down the desolate highway. The night was dark, illuminated only by the pale glow of his headlights and the occasional flash of lightning. He had been driving for hours, hoping to reach his destination before the storm worsened. Sammy's fingers tapped on the steering wheel to the rhythm of his racing heart. The isolated road seemed endless, surrounded by dense woods that seemed to swallow the feeble glow of his headlights. His mind wandered, the monotony of the drive pushing his thoughts into uncomfortable territories. As he rounded a bend, his headlights illuminated a figure standing at the side of the road. A girl, drenched in rain, her clothes sticking to her shivering frame. Sammy's instincts kicked in, and he slowed down, hesitating for a moment before pulling over. He rolled down his window, the rain splattering on his face. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. The girl's face was hidden beneath soaked strands of hair as she looked up. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of fear and relief. "Please, you have to help me. I need a ride." Sammy's heart went out to her. "Of course, hop in. It's not safe out here." She climbed into the car, her clothes leaving damp marks on the seat. "Thank you so much," she whispered, her voice quivering. Sammy stole a glance at her as he drove. She looked disheveled, as if she had been through something unimaginable. He wanted to ask questions, but he could sense that she needed a moment to compose herself. "What's your name?" he finally asked, breaking the silence. "Emily," she replied softly. Sammy noticed her hands were trembling. "Emily, if you're in trouble, I can call the police or someone you trust." She hesitated, her eyes darting around as if assessing her options. "No police. Please just get me as far away from here as possible." The urgency in her voice sent a shiver down Sammy's spine. He couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something wasn't right, but he decided to trust his gut. He pushed his foot down on the gas pedal, determined to get her to safety. As they drove further, the storm intensified, the rain slashing against the windshield like angry tears. Sammy's grip on the wheel tightened, his focus alternating between the road and the rearview mirror. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed, a sensation that gnawed at the edges of his consciousness. Suddenly, a pair of headlights appeared behind them, closing in fast. Sammy's heart raced as he realized the car was tailgating them, dangerously close. Emily's grip on the seat tightened, her breath hitching. "We're being followed," Sammy muttered, his voice tense. Emily's eyes widened, panic evident in her gaze. "Please, you have to lose them." Sammy's hands clenched on the steering wheel. He swerved the car onto a narrow side road, hoping to outmaneuver their pursuer. The tires screeched as he navigated the treacherous path, rain-soaked leaves, and mud flying in all directions. The pursuing car followed suit, its headlights casting eerie shadows in the dense woods. Sammy's heart pounded in his chest as he pushed the car to its limits, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had to protect Emily, no matter what. Just as he thought they had shaken off their pursuer, a blinding flash of light illuminated the road ahead, followed by a deafening crash. The world spun for a moment as Sammy's car jolted to a stop. Smoke wafted from the crumpled front end of the vehicle, the smell of burnt rubber filling the air. Sammy's head throbbed from the impact, and he shook off the daze, immediately turning his attention to Emily. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice tight with concern. Emily nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm fine, but we need to get out of here. They're getting closer." Sammy's heart raced as he glanced at the rearview mirror. The pursuing car had managed to stop as well, its engine rumbling ominously. There was no time to waste. He unbuckled his seatbelt and turned to Emily. "Come on, we have to go." They both scrambled out of the wrecked car, rain soaking them within seconds. Emily clung to Sammy's arm as they dashed into the woods, leaves and twigs crunching beneath their feet. Fear fueled their sprint as they raced through the darkness, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. Sammy's mind raced as he tried to think of a plan. They needed to find a way to escape their pursuers and reach safety. His heart sank as he realized they were surrounded by the unfamiliar forest, disoriented and vulnerable. "Wait," Emily gasped, pulling Sammy to a halt. She pointed to a dilapidated cabin in the distance. "Over there. Maybe we can hide." They sprinted towards the cabin, their breath ragged and clothes clinging to their wet bodies. Sammy's heart pounded as they reached the door, and he twisted the rusty knob. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior filled with shadows and the faint smell of decay. They stepped inside, their eyes adjusting to the gloom. The cabin was abandoned, covered in dust and cobwebs. The air was musty and heavy, adding to the sense of foreboding that settled over them. "We need to find a way to contact the authorities," Sammy said, his voice low. "See if there's a phone or something." Emily nodded, her gaze flickering around the cabin. "I'll look upstairs." Sammy started to explore the main floor, hoping to find any means of communication. As he searched, a chilling realization washed over him. They were trapped. The windows were boarded up, and the only exit was the front door, which was too risky to use with their pursuers outside. He heard a muffled thud from upstairs, followed by Emily's startled cry. Sammy's heart raced as he raced up the creaky staircase, his mind filled with dread. He burst into a dimly lit room to find Emily struggling against the grip of a man, his face twisted into a malicious grin. "Let her go," Sammy yelled, his voice quivering with anger and fear. The man tightened his grip on Emily, his eyes cold and calculating. "I don't think you understand the situation, kid." Sammy's mind raced as he scanned the room, looking for anything he could use as a weapon. He spotted a broken chair leg in the corner and lunged for it. Adrenaline surged through his veins as he swung the makeshift weapon at the man, connecting with a sickening thud. The man grunted and released Emily, stumbling back. Sammy grabbed Emily's hand, his heart pounding as they made a run for the stairs. They descended as fast as their shaky legs could carry them, the man's enraged shouts echoing behind them. They burst out of the cabin, rain pelting their faces once again. Sammy's car was wrecked, and the pursuing car was still there, waiting ominously. But they had no choice. They had to keep running. As they sprinted through the rain-soaked woods, Sammy's mind raced for a solution. They needed help, and they needed it fast. The nearest town was miles away, but there was no way they could make it on foot in this storm. A flash of lightning illuminated a glimmer of hope in the distance, a flickering light, a solitary gas station. Sammy tightened his grip on Emily's hand. "We have to make it to that gas station. Hold on tight." Their pursuit was relentless, the man's shouts growing closer. But Sammy pushed himself harder, his determination fueled by the need to keep Emily safe. The gas station grew larger with every step, a beacon of hope in the darkness. As they reached the gas station, Sammy's breath hitched. The lights were on, and a figure stood behind the counter. He burst through the door, rain-soaked and panting, Emily right behind him. "We need help," Sammy pleaded, his voice desperate. The figure behind the counter turned, revealing a middle-aged woman with a concerned expression. "What's going on?" Sammy struggled to catch his breath as he recounted their harrowing ordeal. The woman's eyes widened as she listened, and she grabbed the phone, dialing 911 without hesitation. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance as Sammy and Emily huddled inside the gas station, their bodies shaking from exhaustion and fear. The nightmare they had stumbled into was far from over, but for the moment, they were safe. The night was draped in shadows as Kaylee and her best friend, Helen, embarked on a road trip, their laughter ringing through the air. The excitement of an impromptu night drive was palpable, and the winding roads ahead seemed to hold endless possibilities. Little did they know, darkness was lurking just beyond their headlights. As they ventured deeper into the countryside, the roads grew narrower and the signs of civilization started to fade. A sense of unease settled in the pit of Kaylee's stomach, but she brushed it off as mere nerves. The two friends chatted animatedly, music playing softly in the background as the moon cast eerie shadows on the landscape. It was around midnight when the first sign of trouble emerged. A pair of headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, seemingly out of nowhere. Kaylee's grip tightened on the steering wheel as the car drew closer, its high beams blinding them. Helen turned to her with a worried expression. "Kaylee, are we being followed?" Helen asked, her voice tinged with apprehension. "I don't know, Helen. Maybe it's just another driver," Kaylee replied, her voice trembling slightly. But the car continued to tail them relentlessly, mirroring their every turn. Unease turned into fear, and fear into terror. Kaylee's heart raced as she desperately tried to lose their pursuer, taking abrupt turns down dark, unfamiliar roads. After what felt like an eternity, they managed to shake off their follower, or so they thought. Breathing heavily, Kaylee pulled over to the side of the road, her hands shaking as she gripped the steering wheel. Helen stared out into the darkness, her eyes wide with fear. "What do we do, Kaylee?" Helen whispered, her voice trembling. "We need to call the police," Kaylee replied, her voice determined. As Kaylee reached for her phone, a chilling sound cut through the silence, the ringtone of her own phone, coming from somewhere outside the car. Her heart dropped as realization hit her. The pursuer had somehow managed to plant her phone outside. They were never alone. Panic surged through Kaylee as she realized the danger they were in. Her hands trembled as she fumbled for her phone, her fingers barely able to dial the emergency number. She quickly explained their situation to the dispatcher, her voice shaking as she described the relentless pursuit. "Stay on the line," the dispatcher instructed. "We're sending a patrol car to your location." As they waited in the car, every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs amplified their fear. Minutes felt like hours, and the darkness outside seemed to close in around them. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed in the silence, growing louder with each passing second. "Kaylee, do you hear that?" Helen's voice quivered. Kaylee nodded, her eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. The footsteps were getting closer and shadows danced around the edges of their vision. In a surge of desperation, Kaylee revved the engine and sped away, hoping to find safety and refuge. But the pursuer was relentless. The distant sirens of the approaching patrol car offered a glimmer of hope, but the fear that the pursuer might reach them before the police did was overpowering. Kaylee's mind raced, her heart pounding as she navigated the treacherous roads in the dead of night. As they continued their harrowing drive, Kaylee's headlights illuminated a worn-down cabin nestled deep within the woods. The sight was both a blessing and a curse, a potential refuge, but also an eerie reminder of their vulnerability. With the sound of sirens growing closer, Kaylee made a split-second decision. She swerved off the road and parked the car near the cabin. "Helen, we need to get inside and lock the doors," Kaylee said urgently. The two friends sprinted to the cabin, their breaths ragged, and managed to barricade themselves inside, just as the patrol car's flashing lights appeared through the trees. Relief washed over them as the police apprehended their pursuer, a man whose twisted obsession had put their lives in peril. As dawn broke and the horror of the night began to fade, Kaylee and Helen huddled in the safety of the cabin. The events of the night had forever changed them, leaving them with scars that would take time to heal. The shadows that had once held promise now seemed like a reminder of the darkness that could unexpectedly envelop their lives.